All right, you guys, welcome back to Change the Conversations. I'm Amy Vanderlinden, a pelvic health physical therapist here in the Phoenix area, and really excited to have on a truly extraordinary guest today who's also a friend, and I adore his wife, and we have that in common. And so, John, I'm going to let you tell a little bit more about what you do, but you guys, John is with us, and that's active self-protection. And he's got quite the varied history. He was also a pastor of a church. He's an author, really done a lot, seen a lot, and just always, it's one of those people I'm grateful for on Facebook. And that's rare these days. Insightful and powerful. And I'm really excited to jump into this conversation. I have no idea where it will take us. And I can't wait for you to tell everybody about your shirt. Those of you that only catch the audio version, you're going to be sad. So jump over to YouTube and check it out on Change the Conversations. But John, thank you for being here. Why don't you tell the lovely folks at home a little bit about you?
Well, hi, Amy, and hi, everyone at home. It's nice to meet you. Yes, first of all, let me apologize. I look like a bum. I don't normally look like a bum, but I just got in from my workout. So, such it is life. My name is John, and I am the founder and owner of a company called Active Self-Protection. We teach good, sane, sober, moral, prudent people to protect their families and their loved ones from criminal violence. We do that mostly through two YouTube channels. The big one, it's stunningly called Active Self-Protection, has a little over 3 million subscribers. We get somewhere 15 to 50 million views a month on that channel. It's the most viewed channel in the world related to self-defense. We have a second one, Active Self-Protection Extra. Over there, we teach defensive skills, handgun skills, shotgun skills, rifle skills, empty-handed skills, legal and moral self-defense, some gear reviews and stuff like that. We teach full-length classes over there for people. We also have a family of apps where we do all that, plus full classes and behind the scenes and all kinds of other stuff. So we teach live classes. We run an instructor certification program. We have a top 1% worldwide podcast where we interview people who've been in real life defensive encounters. I don't do the hosting on that. That's one of my very best friends in the world, Mike Williver, hosts that. He's incredible. And so it's kind of a self-defense media empire at this point, which is weird because it was never supposed to be, like you said before this, and overlapping with it for quite a while. I pastored a church in the Valley for 14 years, two different churches, one for 10 and a half, one for about 3.5, 4. And then before that, I was in retail while I was going to seminary. And before that, I made hot water the hard way in Uncle Sam's Canoe Club for a while. Sounds so much more true than saying I was a nuclear reactor operator in the U.S. Navy. That sounds super like, oh, look, John was a nuclear reactor operator. Really, I was Homer Simpson on an aircraft carrier. That's what I was and what I did. And I'm
And
wearing,
he's
for those of you on
amazingly
YouTube,
humble. Yeah.
I'm on YouTube. If you're watching, I'm wearing my strapped Slowpoke Rodriguez t-shirt today. Bought it on Etsy because he may be the slowest mouse in all Mexico, but he pack a gun. So, so yeah, it's an interesting life I live. I have Aspa's grown from basically me starting a business just to write off ammo because I started carrying a gun in 2006 for self-protection when I was working in retail because of how dangerous it was at the time. And then that has grown to my full-time enterprise. We now have 15 employees all around the nation, really kind of all around the globe. And yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Well, and you guys, he gets asked to consult on high-level court cases at times. We won't dive into that because I know that some stuff you can't share and some stuff is quite the rabbit hole. But your level of expertise in this area has just seemed like a quantum leap. Because when did you really start getting active on the YouTube channel to now be at over 3 million?
So the YouTube channel, if you go and look at it, it says it was founded in 2013, and it was because I actually labeled it. I said, oh, here's Active Self-Protection, but I didn't really start doing anything with it until 2016. We started making videos. What I'm known for on the big channels, people send me real life surveillance videos of real life defensive encounters, armed robberies, carjackings, muggings, home invasions, and I do after action reports on them. So here's what happened to somebody. Let's watch it, whether they got out of it okay or not. And then let's learn the lessons. What are the main key points, whether they did well or not? So that really started on YouTube in April of 2016. So from there, where I had probably, I think about 6,000 subscribers, basically at that point, YouTube was expanding its monetization, and they sent me an email and were like, hey, on your YouTube channel, it has like 4 videos on it that you haven't done anything with. Cause I had a Facebook audience at that point. And they were like, hey, you can monetize your content if you want. And that's like walking down the street and find a $5 bill. So what moron wouldn't say yes to that, right? Okay, sure. And we had started making video content for Facebook because I think the Facebook page at the time had, I want to say maybe 150,000 likes or something like that. And so I was like, I was making content there, and I was like, well, we have all this back content that's sitting on my hard drive that I made that it's already been on Facebook. Let's throw a few of them on YouTube, see how it does. And that was a good decision because the YouTubes have been very good for us. So it's been, that last now 7 years or so on YouTube. And we put on the big channel, we post 10 videos a week right now. So it's every single day of the week is a surveillance video of an encounter a private citizen got in. 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the afternoons, we do badge cam analyses as well. Those badge cams are used in law enforcement agencies by patrol sergeants, police academies. You're right. I do expert witness work as well. I try not to do too much of it. It is a giant pain in the tush. But it's really, it's very fulfilling work too. And when you get to really wade into an issue and see all of the discovery and then write an in-depth report, that scratches my itch for research writing. When I was a seminary professor, I loved research. I taught graduate level research writing for 5 years at Phoenix Seminary. And so like to get to scratch that itch and then to explain it to a jury is super fun, but the schedule of doing it is just monstrous. And so it's completely inflexible and completely unpredictable. So, when you're trying to do things like run a national conference and teach classes around the country and appear and do stuff, and then a judge says, oh, by the way, you will be here on Tuesday the 14th. And I'm like, Your Honor, I'm booked on Tuesday the 14th. And the judge goes, I'm sorry, I'm going to start over. And you let me know when I lost you. You will be here on Tuesday the 14th. Yes, Your Honor, let me rearrange the whole rest of my life now. So right. That's how that goes, So yeah. I really got into the defensive space teaching in 2011. So it's been 12 years now. And then when I quit my pastoral job, to answer your question, how did this really get big? I quit my pastoral job the beginning of 2018. February 1st was my first day of Ask being solo. And I told Laura, the greatest woman I've ever met, who happens to let me live in her house, I said, look, I don't have a job anymore. So now this is it. This is all in on this. And so I gotta be really good at it, which means I need to train like a dog. And Laura said, pay your staff, pay your wife, pay your bills. Don't borrow no money. I don't care what you do. And I was like, remember you said that. Remember you said that. And I set out like a mad dog. And now, yeah, I can't really deny the fact that I'm probably the national subject matter expert on how private citizen defensive gunfights go and what they really are like.
Well, and that's that statement, to be able to make that statement, to be a national expert on anything is extraordinary. But when you break down the fact, first of all, you have a massive gift for teaching. And
okay, hold on. I'm gonna back you up on that. I like people, but teaching's not a gift, it's a skill.
Okay.
And I have worked very hard to hone that skill. And I have
true.
My master's degree is in communication related field. I have a master's of divinity. It's a 96-hour master's degree in biblical communication, which is like 3 master's degrees in one. And one of those master's degrees is in communication and teaching skills. So I work hard at the craft of teaching, and I am really good. I'm my best self in front of an audience, but I don't think it's a gift as much as it's a skill.
Fair enough. And I definitely did not mean to imply you haven't worked your ass off for it.
No. And I didn't take it that way.
Yeah. But even people who work really hard at it don't end up connecting in the way that you connect with people, John. And I think you know that.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that's the piece that feels like the God-given piece to it, the gift piece, because you manage to connect in a way that is so genuine and so authentic, yet somehow come across loving. And then to apply any of that to a topic like guns and self-defense in this country, in this climate, is pretty remarkable. And it's not hard for me to see why that skyrocketed in need and popularity, because first of all, you managed to do it in a way that's extremely interesting. And a lot of the encounters are like, the bus crash, like you can't take your eyes off them. So even when they're scary, we want to know what happens. We want to know how it turns out. And then the way in which you break down having common sense, not letting your ego get you killed or hurt. That is a really critical message today, but also at a time where a lot of people are resisting the just turn over your guns, the just make more gun laws, the all of that piece. And we don't have to get political with this, or we can, but the whole point is change the conversation. And I think that's at the heart of what you've done. You've gone about this in a way that even people that hate you, and if you weren't doing extraordinary things, you wouldn't have haters. But even people that get on, get all ballsy behind a desktop there, and troll or whatever, or even just genuinely argue with you, I think there's still so many that respect you because of the way that you approach breaking down such a sensitive and dangerous topic, and oftentimes dealing with very sensitive content, especially badge cams. I mean, people's feelings about police officers right now are all over the board, from, blindly defending them to no end versus attacking for no reason. Like, it's just so polarized. And I'm just extremely grateful to have someone like you in that space going, whoa, 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 guys, let's just take a second and look at real life scenarios. Like, let's just look at and take situations that are horrible and use them for good, even when the outcome is not favorable for whoever's involved, even when somebody made a life-altering mistake. What can we learn from this? How can we all become better? How can we better train our officers? How can we better train civilians? If you're going to own a gun, how is a great way to go about owning a gun? I know, because I've been there. I know you invite people in your home and try to help them choose home safety that is intelligent and rational and cost effective, all the things. And you're just you've been a resource in my life on multiple occasions, on multiple issues. And I often make decisions in reference to your statement of which shit sandwich do I want to eat. That wisdom has stayed with me.
Sometimes, do you want the brown shit sandwich? Do you want the green shit sandwich? But you're going to eat one of them. So
right.
Pick one. You want the rye bread, or do you want the sourdough?
Well, and let's not just sit here for weeks, days, years figuring out how to get out of this sandwich situation. It's like, it is what it is. How do we keep moving forward? And that has served me a lot more occasions than when we actually held the original conversation. So,
I would say that, listen, there's no hope for a better past. And one of my big things is, I wouldn't call myself a stoic by any stretch of the imagination, but I do love stoicism's radical acceptance of reality. As a Jesus guy, I find that to be very helpful, that the first step towards any improvement is radically accepting reality for what it is. And the more correctly I can perceive and understand reality, then I can make steps from here to get better, right? To make a step in a positive direction. So, the idea of self-defense, it's a polarizing topic because it strikes to the core people's ideals of the way society should be. But I do believe in the mantra, every civil right for every single person. And the right to self-defense is a civil right. And so that's not a political right. That's not the righties love guns and the lefties don't. That's kind of an old school paradigm. Quite frankly, when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, that got a lot of my lefty friends thinking. Let me tell you, they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, we don't like this." And what happens when the boxcars show up because of Orange Man and because of mean tweets? And then guess what? They started thinking about firearms, and I said, "Good." I mean, I'm neither Republican nor Democratic myself. I'm like a registered independent, kind of wackadoodle libertarian. Active self-protection only has one political position, and that's it. Okay, so John, as a person, I have tons. My company only has one. The right to the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Full stop. Because I tell folks all the time, in my world, though, the First Amendment is far more important than the Second. The right to free speech and free worship and freedom of the press and freedom of assembly and the redress of grievances. I always say that every American should be able to enumerate the 5 protections of the First Amendment and understand what each one is. And the right to free worship is incredibly important to me. The right to the freedom of expression, even over things that I find distasteful and ugly. And so because of that, I don't want the government. Now, that's not saying that I, as a private citizen, can't get after somebody for saying something I find egregiously offensive. That's saying, because you say something egregiously offensive, I don't want you thrown in jail.
Right.
I don't want the government to censure you. So I think that, when the government starts meddling in the press, which we know has happened, that's beyond problematic. That's a huge issue. So when I say, hey, wait a minute, when it comes down to this idea of self-defense, I'm not pro-gun. I'm pro people not getting hurt by bad people. And if you're like, people are like, well, we should have a bunch of gun control. Hey, listen, how about we radically accept reality that we're not uninventing the gun? And that if we live in a libertarian society, which we do, the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is baked into the concept of America, right? Go read the Declaration of Independence. It's kind of a thing, it's kind of an important part.
If you go what we're supposed to be about.
Yeah, if you go read the Founding Fathers, it's kind of me. And they weren't perfect. Don't get me wrong. You read the Founding Fathers, and they're very time-bound souls with very big problems and not perfect souls, but man, they wrote a heck of a document. Boy, did they really do a pretty good job. And so we're not going to uninvent all that. The Supreme Court has held that, and guess what? For my friends who are on the other side, you're in trouble, because the last year's New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin decision, you're in trouble if you want gun control. They're falling left and right. They're not going to hold water. The text, history, and tradition test of Bruin is just wrecking anybody who wants gun control. But so all that aside, I say, listen, I don't want everyone to own firearms. I don't, just because you have a right to do something doesn't mean you ought to do it. I always say everybody has a right to have children if you're an adult, but not everybody should. Yeah, y'all know that if you don't have that friend, somebody in your social circle that you're like, yeah, you shouldn't be a parent. Then there's a good chance you are that friend in your social circle who shouldn't be a parent. But you have the right to, and same thing, you have the right to own firearms. That's not to say everybody should, and you don't necessarily have to, but I will say that for oppressed people, for people who are at risk, and in our culture, there's plenty of demographics who could be at risk, elderly people, women in particular. Why do men target women for criminal violence? Because they're bigger and stronger than those women, and they're a much easier target than another dude who shares your super soldier serum, right? Testosterone is a hell of a drug, and you ladies just don't got as much of it. It's just the way life is. And so particularly LGBT people are far more likely to be the targets of abuse than to be abusive. And so the list goes on, right? So right. If you're in those demographics and there's a strong possibility that you could be victimized, firearm is a hell of a force multiplier, and it is an equalizer. And what we find in criminal violence, for the most part, now process violence, if they want to hurt you because they like inflicting pain, that's a different story. Or social violence sometimes is that way too. Social violence is that idea that you broke a social code, and so you have to pay for that. You offended somebody. Road rage is all social violence, right? Like, but in what we call resource predation, which is, I want your money, I want your phone, I want your car, I want your stuff. They threaten you with a knife or they threaten you with a gun. When the shots start coming their way, they realize that they left the oven on, and they skedaddle pretty quick. So, and it doesn't matter if you, now obviously you are an incredibly fit human and strong like bull. But it doesn't matter if a 270-pound dude wants to toss you around like a rag doll. He's going to toss you around like a rag doll. And I don't care how strong you are, Amy. And that's just the reality of things. Yeah. And when he says, you're coming with me, you can say, no, I'm not. But unless you can do something to enforce that boundary, well, then you're in trouble. And guess what? A great way, when it's appropriate and legal and morally acceptable, when he says you're coming with me, and you say, me and my 9mm say otherwise. And if you try to put a hand on me, I'm going to assume you're going to try to drag me somewhere. And guess what? I'm going to stop you from doing that. So back up. Well, guess what? He has an opportunity at that moment to back up, and he probably will.
Well, and on that note, John, again, I think part of your massive popularity is, again, reason, common sense. You know, owning a gun doesn't automatically keep you safe. Knowing how to properly use a gun keeps you safe. Hence your commitment not to just ranting on YouTube, but to actual classes and to training and to all of the different conferences and things that you do and content that you put out that does educate on how to truly protect yourself. And what would you, out of all, gosh, I can't even imagine the number of hours of video that you have watched. Let's stick with the average civilian, and actually let's stick with females for right now.
Okay.
What are some of your top tips towards common sense safety? And I know situational awareness is huge.
Yeah. So Jeff Cooper, who's the father of modern handgun training in America, is famous for saying that buying a gun doesn't make you armed any more than buying a guitar makes you a musician. Okay, it's whether or not you know how to use it that counts. So although there's a big difference there, because a handgun is an awful lot easier to learn to use well than a guitar. To get decent with a guitar, you're talking about weekly lessons and weekly practice, and probably putting in several hundred hours worth of work before you can do more than play the scales, says the guy who can't play the guitar. But a firearm, far less than that, frankly. And if you're gonna own guns, this was important to us when we got into this, right? I bought my first gun. I didn't own guns when I was in the Navy because it's too hard when you're in active duty to own firearms.
Ironic.
Well, it is. I mean, you're moving to different states all the time and base regulations, and that's just a pain. So I bought my first gun, I think, in 2003 as an adult. I owned them as kids. We shot and we hunted as kids too. But anyhow, Laura was scared to death of guns, like scared to death. And so when I decided we were going to have a shotgun for the house, she's like, okay, but I need to learn how to use it so that I'm safe with it. And that was a really great and brave decision on her part.
Can I pause you right there?
Sure.
And you might be going there. I knew this just from what I've learned, but can you explain why a shotgun is such a great basic home defense weapon?
Yes. So a shotgun, Clint Smith, who's another big deal in the training industry, he says handguns poke holes in people, rifles poke holes through people, shotguns rip pieces of people off and throw it on the floor. A properly resourced shotgun, so a properly loaded shotgun. Don't load it with birdshot. Birdshot is for birds and doesn't do a very good job of killing birds. If ever you've hunted, you go out and you shoot a bird with birdshot, you're probably going to have to go up and wring its neck. Okay. And you are much larger than a bird. There's a lot of people going, oh my God, this is why I don't hunt. What are you talking about? I'm saying, though, I hunt
if birds. I wanted to wring its neck, I wouldn't have brought my gun. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I mean, you can blast it again, I guess. But anyways, so properly loaded with buckshot, a shotgun is an absolute fight stopper. In all of the video analysis that I have ever done, I have never seen somebody shot anywhere with a 12 gauge with buckshot in it that did anything other than lay down and regret their life choices. Like, I've never seen. One shot is it. I've seen somebody shot twice with a shotgun, but not because they needed to, simply because the officer in question pressed the trigger twice in close proximity, and he brought the gun up and went bang, bang, and put two in the guy, and the one would have handled the problem. How about that? So for your average person that isn't going to get into, we get these things in the defensive gunfighting world that people think that the gang of ninja is going to show up, and so they're going to have to fight off the ninja horde. They think that John Wick is going to happen to them. Newsflash, if a gang is showing up to your house, they probably have 3 or 4 letters emblazoned on their chest, and they're Fed boys, and they have infinite respawns. They're bringing all the boys to the yard, and you ain't going to beat them, and I don't care what you're using. However, so a shotgun for your average person, because it is because the terminal effect is so strong. We always teach people in home defense, your typical home defense strategy is to hunker down. It's not to go, again, be John Wick, but it's to get to a spot where you can defend. So now, of course, if you've got kids on the other side of the house, things change a little bit, stuff like that, okay? But for most people in most situations, you're barricaded behind your bedroom door. Get out, I have a gun. The cops are on the way. It's usually a pretty effective strategy. Then if the door breaks down, okay, well, the first guy to show themselves in that door gets 8 pellets of double-aught buck. And then he'll lie down right there. I mean, he just will stop. There's just no doubt about it. So that's why for many people, a shotgun as a home defense tool is a really, really useful tool.
Yeah.
It also avoids the political stuff too. The AR-15 is the most popular rifle, the most popular firearm in America by a million miles. Okay. So there's something like probably 25 million AR-15s in private citizen hands in America today. It's a humongous number. It's the most popular rifle in America. The reason it's the most popular rifle in America is the same reason the King James Bible is the most popular Bible. It ain't patented anymore. And so anybody can make them. And so a useful tool, super easy to make, and very popular. Okay, fine. There's nothing wrong with an AR pattern rifle as well. It's simply a more difficult tool to use effectively and well than a properly loaded shotgun.
Well, and I mean, a shotgun, again, major disclaimer, because buckshot will go through walls. So you can't, like we've talked about this at my house. If I was exiting my bedroom, I'm facing my daughter's bedroom. I could not fire right then. But if I did, like you said, hunkered down in my bedroom and they came through, I could shoot the other way and be clear. But it's basically point and shoot. The accuracy needed is very low. And
well, I'm going to stop you there. It's actually not true. A shotgun needs to be aimed just like another gun does. Okay. So
but the degree of accuracy needed is lower.
Not really, about the same.
Okay.
You talk about in a properly loaded shotgun at room distances, your pattern should be about that big.
Okay.
So, or less. In my personal home defense shotgun at 10 yards, the pattern is that big. It is literally 2 inches. Now it hits like the hammer of Thor. It's like a column of angry bees instead of a swarm of angry bees.
Okay.
So you still got to aim it. You still got to hit what you aim at. The other part, to finish my thought on the politics, you shoot somebody with an AR-15, depending on where you live, there's political ramifications. You use the evil black rifle. That is a political hot button for sure. You shoot them with the gun that everybody's uncle uses to hunt ducks. Oh, why would somebody have a shotgun in their house? Because we hunt. Oh, okay, cool, whatever. It's not nearly the political football that an AR-15 is. So they all need to be aimed. All of them, bullets will go through a humongous number of interior walls. Okay, so your average pistol bullet will go through something like 9 interior walls before it comes to a stop. You don't have 9 interior walls between you and the outside. Your average shotgun, somewhere around that same thing, 8 or 9. Your average rifle, somewhere around 5 or 6. A lot of people don't think about that. The AR-15, because it's a very small bullet, it's a 55 to 75 grain bullet. And it tumbles and breaks up relatively quickly. So it'll only go through 5 or 6 walls. Now think about your house. Are there 5 or 6 walls between you and the outside? Probably not. And is your house made out of, brick or block or something like that? Or is it like most of us that it's stucco and chicken wire, and 2x4s? Okay, well, a 2x4 might stop some things, but most of it is just air or insulation. Bolt's going to rip right through it. So the key there is to be good enough not to miss. That's the key.
Yeah, that'd be important because it could go through your walls and into your neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Thankfully, big world, small bullets. And so it's very rare that we see misses that have severe consequences. Although they do happen. We have seen, had one on the channel not too long ago of a guy who was mugged at an ATM by a couple of guys in his car. So he's drive-through ATM and dudes came up, pointed guns at him, mugged him. Then they ran off and jumped into a truck. Well, he jumps out of his car then with a gun in his hand, starts shooting at them. And in the process, there's another car going by and he killed a 9-year-old girl in that other car. And that's just the reality of things. Now, terrible terrible outcome that he has to live with for the rest of his life, right? And so we had an incident, a police officer involved incident out of Los Angeles. This was a year and a half ago or so. Guy killing people inside this mall. Officer shows up. He's running a patrol carbine, so an AR-15 pattern rifle. Probably he's a cop. They very well have been a fully auto version, an M4. Missed with a shot. When he sees that guy, shot at him, went through the interior wall of a dressing room and killed an innocent bystander, a young, like a 14-year-old girl in that room. So obviously those are incredibly high consequence. They're very rare. Most of the time I've seen people use guns as a rattlesnake rattle, basically as a loud scream. They're just winging shots off randomly. Bang, 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 bang. I'm scared. Leave me alone. Go away from me. And those bullets are going God knows where. They sure don't know where they're going. And nobody gets hurt, and it works. And the bad guy runs off because he gets scared of the loud noises. So I am not at all for mandatory training. Don't hear me say that. I'm not for the government mandating training on almost anything. Okay. Certainly not in enumerated rights. And so, but just because the government doesn't say we have to, doesn't mean we shouldn't. Okay. So that's like the government doesn't mandate that we eat healthy, but I think we should. Right. And I think we should educate and encourage people to do so. And the less we do, the fatter we get. I am subject to that my very own self. I'm working on it. But the government mandating that, hey, wait a minute, we're going to outlaw fast food in America because it's bad for you. That seems egregious. And so, like, same thing, right? Like, I'm not for mandatory government training, but I am, I'm that guy that goes, hey, with 500 million privately owned firearms in America, why aren't we teaching firearm safety programs in schools? Why, I'm not saying it has to be a political issue, but say, hey, when you have guns in the house, kids, you need to know, how to stay away from them. By the time you get to be old enough to recognize that, you need to know how to make it, how to unload and clear a firearm, how to go get help, get a little bit older, taking the mystique out of the firearms. With our kids, we always said, one of the reasons my kids hunted when they were little, and I'm talking little, we had kids out 5, 6, 7 years old, hunt squirrels with us. And why? Because you recognize when you put that bead on something and you press the trigger, it dies. And then we clean it, we eat it. But that impresses on somebody that this is not a game. This is not Hollywood. This is not a nothing thing. When you point this at somebody and you press the trigger, they die. And so that kind of education, I think, is priceless too.
Well, gosh, social media has created such a disconnect from each other, and then video games, and to value human life right now, there's not really any downside to any ways in which we could increase that sober realization of the value of life, and that things have consequences.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The problem with parasocial relationships, so social media builds an awful lot of parasocial relationships, not truly true human relationships. Now, I think they can be very valuable. You and I know each other in real life, and we get together with our spouses and have dinner, and we have real, like, honest relationship, right? And that is enhanced because I get to see you so much more often than I would in real life, because our lives are busy. I get to see you on Facebook. Yay, right? So that's a really good thing. And I do have earnest friends who I almost never see, but I do get to see on social media. Cool. The problem is, as somebody who is YouTube famous, is that people think they know me and they don't know me. And I get people all the time who come up, and when we're out in public, oh my gosh, John, I'm your biggest fan. And, they assume I know them. Like, they don't introduce themselves. They just assume because I'm in their living room every day that I know them. And I'm like, oh, hi, I'm John. I didn't catch your name, by the way, and things like that. So I think when we use social media to enhance real relationships, to meet people that we necessarily wouldn't in the real world, to enhance those relationships, it's a really positive thing. I think it can dehumanize, though, because we can see other people reacting as simply gremlins in our pocket supercomputer, and unworthy of our respect when their ideas differ from ours. And instead, when you go, this is one of the reasons that Laura and I travel so much. I love international travel. I adore even here in the U.S. What a treat! If you are, I'm I live in Arizona, but I get to travel all over the country. So this weekend, Laura and I will be in California speaking at an event. I'm speaking at the event. Laura's hanging out with me and having fun. And we joke that's international travel. It's not quite, but it's a very different culture than it is here in Arizona. And I was in Ohio last month. I was in Missouri a couple of months ago. We're going to be in Kansas at the end of this month. So when you travel around the country, you get to meet a lot of different people with a different culture than yours, who see things in a different way. When we go to Thailand, Laura and I love Thailand. I've been to Thailand. I've been to Panama, Mexico a bunch of times, Canada, Brazil, Israel, Rwanda. And when you travel those places, guess what you find? You find other people there that are more like you than you think. But their world is different than yours, and they do things differently than you, and it works just fine for them. And so when you can expand your world like that, there's a whole lot less other and a whole lot more us. And I find that makes our world a lot better. And that's made me better as a Jesus guy too, because I don't see it as me as a Christian versus the world. The world is who Jesus loves. And so guess what? I got to love them too. And I got to love those folks for who they are. And so my friends, I go back to Thailand. We've been there several times. We love it there. And my friends, Thailand is about 95% Buddhist. And it's kind of an interesting amalgam of Chinese Buddhism. And fine and wonderful people, and I love them very much. And of course, I'd love them to be like me, but learning that their form of religion basically makes them do the best they can and be good moral people. Okay, cool. Like, I'm down with that. Now let's talk about how that looks and where that goes in our world. So you go down to Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo is Brazil, largely Catholic country, right? Humongous Catholic presence, and their version of Catholicism is interesting and different. But getting to know them, well, then guess what? I'm not fighting Protestant versus Catholic. These are my brothers and sisters who worship Jesus like I do, just uniquely and a little different. So when you start doing that, I feel like it opens things up to a different perspective, and it makes more people like me, and that then builds good things. Whereas social media divides instead. And it divides based on emotions. And so it's designed to get you to click on things, to get you to watch ads, to get you to buy things, to spend your money, right? Your attention and your money is what those other ones are after. And the more they can outrage you, the more you will do that. And so whenever I get mad on social, whenever something, outrages me, I stop and ask myself the question, wait a minute. Who is benefiting from my outrage? Who is making money on my outrage? Who is trying to control me with my anger? And I see that a lot of times, like somebody, okay. Recently, I'll tell you, in my world, right? So last Friday, the governor of New Mexico put out by executive order that she was banning the open and concealed carry of firearms in Albuquerque and its entire surrounding county for 30 days to combat the scourge of gun violence. And boy, let me tell you, people in my kind of social circle, Second Amendment folks, went ballistic. The anger was humongous. And I just asked, okay, time out. Who's farming the rage here? Because you know what immediately happened? The sheriff, the chief of police of Albuquerque, the sheriff of the county, I think it's Bernalillo County, we're both like, yeah, I'm not enforcing that. That's not happening. Sorry, but there's no way, because the amount of money it will cost us to enforce that, and the amount of civil lawsuits coming from that, nope, not doing it. Sorry. So it is wrong, and a tempest in a teacup. So I just chuckled and said, well, who's filed the lawsuits? I mean, the lawsuits have got to show up, right? Like, I mean, we don't have to get all angry about it. We can just go, no, sorry, governor, no. And every judge there, whether it's Albuquerque or federal, whatever, a judge goes, what? Stupid, stop that. It's a no-brainer. So, but of course, there were organizations that were farming that for money. Oh, you got to donate to us because we got to do the thing. Well, just go do the thing. And so I asked that in 100 different areas, whatever that area is that you're super mad about. Whether it's politics or religion or, abortion or the gays or whatever the case may be, right? Like, who's monetizing your anger right now? And are they doing it in a way that is for your best, or is it for their best? That hurts people's feels, but it's true.
That's a good question to ask for sure. And we were talking yesterday at church. Our pastor brought up that there's like over 40,000 different denominations. Most of us could think of like 12 to 16, and 40,000, and like the nuance even amongst Christ followers, like post-trib, trib, like, I mean, it goes on and on and on about, how many times you should take communion. Like we like to make legalism about everything. And so I think, yeah, boiling it back down to the fact that socials do dehumanize and they divide, and that we're a lot more similar than we are different. And like you said, it can get very challenging to just use the pieces that are for our good. Because like you said, there are some great bonuses to connecting and ways that community can be valuable. And even though we're both in Phoenix, far more convenient to be able to hop on and do this podcast on Zoom than actually the video doesn't even work great if you try to get together. So
it really doesn't. Doesn't matter.
I've done that before. I was like, oh, let's just be together. It's like, oh, this is awkward. It doesn't work. So I think that taking it at face value, and I love when I see you post about like, and I'm done with comments for the week. Like I'm out of.
I hit the rule. The rule has been established for a reason. Once the rule has been satisfied, I have to just call it a day.
And what's your rule? Share.
My rule is 3 fuck offs. And if I get to the place where it's actually 3 fuck yous. So if I get to that place, the first time I said, man, fuck you, and I'm going to comment back to that guy, or ban him off the channel for that, whatever. When I hit my 3rd one for the day, I'm done. And that we built that, Stephanie, our CEO, and I, from the series Justified. It was one of my favorite series, the original Justified. Timothy Oliphant as Raylan Gibbons, just a great series. And I think it was the 1st season, he says to a guy who he's arrested, he's driving him back. He's a U.S. Marshal. And he looks at this guy who's, ranting about how the world's against him. And he looks at him, he says, man, if you run into an asshole in the morning, you ran into an asshole. But if you run into assholes all day, you're the asshole. And so I start, okay, all right. When I'm in danger of running into assholes all day, I just stop. I go, okay, maybe I need a snack and a nap.
You're like, maybe it's me that hates everybody today.
Yes, exactly right. And, it's funny. That's a lot. So for the last few years, I've really worked hard on my soul. I've really worked hard. I'm a big fan of therapy. I'm a big fan of the hard work that is. We've done a ton of family therapy, some individual therapy for me, lots for other members of the family too. But, working on that internal regulation and that internal understanding of who I am and what I'm feeling, and like being able to identify a feeling. And wait a minute, why am I mad about this? And what is it that it's saying to me? And then being able to articulate that, right? I said this, I wish every man in America could say with understanding that a truth when something hurts his feelings. And simply to say, I've done this before. I had a business relationship, still have the business relationship, where I texted a friend, hey, a business partner, you got a minute for a call? Yeah, sure. So I call him and I'm like, hey, dude, I just needed to call you because I needed to let you know this thing went down and it really hurt my feelings. And my feelings are really hurt on that. And he just like stopped, just like pulled him up dead in his tracks. Whoa, I'm sorry. What's going on there? Well, this thing here and that thing here, and we've talked about this, and it made me feel really small and unimportant. It made me feel like you ignored me and like I didn't matter. And that it just hurt my feelings. It made me feel like I wasn't important. And he was like, good God, man, that's the last thing on earth I want to do is make you feel unimportant or make you feel like I've forgotten you or whatever. And thank you for bringing that to me. So I could have called him and said, you know what, damn it, you pissed me off because that was disrespectful and you pissed me off. Okay. But instead, really, I was like, okay, why am I angry? And, why am I frustrated? Well, he disrespected me? What does that even mean? Well, he didn't offer me a place in his world, or I felt like he marginalized me, and that made me feel small, insignificant, and that hurts my feelings. That's how I really feel. I feel like a little 5-year-old whose feelings are hurt. Now, sometimes when I realize that, I go, and Is that true? No, that's not true, you moron. Now I got to go talk to Jesus about it, right?
Right.
Like, your spouse does something and they,
Right.
they leave their dirty laundry in the middle of the floor and you're like, ask them to do this every time. Just put the stupid laundry in the stupid laundry basket. How dare they do that on purpose to me? Is she really doing that on purpose? Of course she's not doing that on purpose to you. Come on, man. Go take that to God. And then maybe, hey, can I ask you again? You try to do that. Like, it's funny because Laura and I will, she'll see something. Hey, dear, can I do it? Like, oh God, I swear I'm like 97% on that. And she goes, no, I know. It just got missed. And when it does, it's a really kind of a big thing for me. I'll try to go from 97 to 100. And she, no, I see that you're usually doing it. Just got forgotten. So if you could, my wife, her ADHD means she leaves cabinets open everywhere she goes. She just does. And if you want to know if my wife's been in the kitchen, just look, are there open cabinets? If so, Laura has been here. And rather than getting frustrated about that, I've had to learn that, like, is this my wife being disrespectful to me? No, of course it's not. It's her fighting her little, flitting butterfly brain. That's a real thing. ADHD is, and she gets something out of there. And now that went to Narnia and she has to go do whatever she's dealing with now. So I try to look at that because, again, it's a me thing, right? So I can get angry at this, or I can say, my wife has been here and this kitchen has been a blessing to my wife, and I can close the cabinets and move on with my day.
Yeah, reframe.
Reframe it internally. Exactly right.
Now, let's stay on that for a second, because people own businesses like you do, and I do on a smaller scale, and people go to therapy. But I think we usually associate therapy with our personal life or our personal relationships. How have you taken what you needed from therapy, what you've learned in therapy? Why did that matter for your business?
Oh, I mean, listen, your business is a reflection of you. Don't let anybody fool you, right? So the culture of your business, and as I think it was it Sinek who said that, culture eats strategy for lunch.
It might have been Simon Sinek.
Yeah. But the idea that, and where does the culture of your business come from, as especially a small business owner? It comes from the owner, 100%. And so I always tell folks, listen, the most basic forms of therapy is reading good books and having good mentors. Okay. So those are like low level. Those not the same input as a professional therapist, but kind of the lowest level and intro to that is reading good books and having good mentors. And if you're not doing that as a business owner, then your business is being run by an idiot and you should fire them. I try to read, I don't know, 15 to 20 books a year, developing myself, working on me as a leader, me as a business owner, me as a change agent, me as a servant of people, and just me as a person. So that's good. I also think, again, the therapeutic input, we've done a ton of family therapy, and that family therapy has helped us to see a lot of times people's family dynamic problems show up because we think about it as me and you and not as us. And recognizing how those relationships work together and how to self-regulate and how to socially regulate. So, that idea of internal regulation, but also social and external regulation, boundaries, stuff like that, right? Healthy communication patterns, and speaking your mind in such a way that it enhances relationships rather than decreases them, rather than hurts them. I remember, this is a huge one I had to learn in therapy, that we had some time, our middle child had a really, really tough go. We spent a lot of time in the hospital. And at one point they would get to a place where we called it takeoff velocity. We would get to a place where we were emotional enough, we were taking off, we're going to the hospital, and there was nothing we were going to do to come down from that. Crisis was going to be there. Cops might show up. Happened a lot. Okay. So just full transparency here. My Dad of the Year award got lost in the mail. I'm never eligible for it again. And when they went up, I had to learn, and that took a lot of therapy, to go down. Because of course I'd want to match, right? And start screaming. But something I learned in therapy was really important, was a story that was told. And it was a guru who's walking with his students, and they see these on the beach, they see this family, and they're all screaming at each other. And the student asks the guru, says, why are they screaming at each other? Why would people that love each other scream at each other like that? And he said, well, it's because their hearts are so far apart. that they feel like they have to yell to be heard over the distance between their hearts. And this is why you never hear lovers yell at each other. They whisper, because their hearts are so close that they speak very softly to one another. And so if you want to know when you feel like yelling, it's because you feel like your heart is so far away, you have to yell to be heard. And that combined with Leonard Nimoy, that those who will not listen to a shout might draw in to hear a whisper, said, okay, wait a minute, now I can lower my tone, keep my own regulation okay, and invite my child in and come here, hold my hand. I love you. It's okay. Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me what's, tell me what feeling you're feeling inside right now. And that led to some tense moments and then some real positives. And the same thing in business, honestly, so I have quite the social presence at this point. I can stomp around and get my way. And really, within my industry, if I want, I could be a bully, and which of course sucks, right? Nobody likes a bully. And instead to go, okay, wait a minute. First of all, you have to be very careful with that power. I have to be very careful with that power, because I can ride herd over people and hurt folks with it. And that, as a Jesus guy, is not okay. When you abuse those you have power over, I think that specifically offends Jesus in very particular ways. And I ain't answering for that, quite frankly, but it's not worth it. Number two, though, watching that power and then recognizing, wait a minute, I can build dense relationship networks here if I can internally regulate and socially regulate, to where when I could get angry, instead I draw people in closer and say, okay, wait a minute, let's talk about this like adults. Even if we end up not doing business together, which does happen, let's make sure that we understand each other well, and then we can part as friends. That's been very powerful in business for me. And I think part of why we've grown, frankly, is because in the business of active self-protection, the only thing I have is my word. The only thing I have is my ability to help somebody. And so in order to do that, I have to connect with them on an authentic level. And that's it. So I also always say that in social media in particular, okay, as a social media celebrity, right? A guy that's YouTube famous, you got two choices, and only two choices here. Either you can form a persona and make a character, and then you play that character authentically and continuously on social media. I have a good friend, his name is Matt Page. He created the character Master Ken. And if you ever enter the dojo show, or just look up Master Ken on any of the socials, he is the picture of every bad martial arts teacher ever. And he is fucking hilarious. Okay. He is so good at Master Ken. And he plays that character to a T all the time on his socials. And the funniest part is he's got this like Magnum PI mustache, and it's an appliance. It's not real. And so when he takes it off, I swear before God, he is Clark Kent. You can
oh my gosh,
right by him and not recognize that it's Master Ken, because he doesn't have the mustache on. So funny. And that's one way you can do that, right? So you can be a character. I would argue, in some sense, probably the biggest one of this is Paris Hilton, which most people don't recognize. Paris Hilton has a master's degree in education. She's actually a genius businesswoman, but she plays an idiot on social media, and a ditz and a socialite, and it's made her billions of dollars. And so she does that, and she does it well. Kudos to her. I think the only other way other than making that character is to be radically and authentically yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you have to overshare. I probably overshare on social, but you don't have to overshare. But the only other alternative is to just not have any pretense at all and be honest. That's the path that I've chosen, and I've chosen that because it's just easier for me. And I don't have to remember, what did I tell somebody? What's the story that they know? Well, the only story that exists is the real one. So, it's what it is. And I think also people curate their social, and there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to share all your dirty laundry on social or whatever. But I think for Laura and I, for me in particular, there's a stigma. We started this with mental health care stuff, such a stigma around mental health. Yeah. And I'm like, nah, that's bullcrap. Let's talk about it. Let's be real about it. Here's what we've gone through. Here's what the realities are. So I have children who are LGBT, and so okay, so it's a Jesus guy whose kids are LGBT. What does that mean? How does that work? Well, if we ain't talking about it, then we're all just going to sit here and hide in our little shame closet. That's great.
Well, I know you and Laura have walked very closely with other couples and parents, and either wrestling with their faith and how to love their kids and dealing with mental health, and really just showed up in moments that matter. And not just because you've been there, but because that's who you guys are also. But and been very real. Like, this is when we've blown it. This is when we've nailed it. This is when we've survived. Times. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's so valuable. That's so valuable also. Just and I mean, I don't know. I mean, sheesh, I'm almost 48 and still navigating some pieces about, actually, at my therapy session a week or two ago, a thing came up about, as being raised as an only child, like, I did not have really any practice navigating conflict until like high school and college. And high school, that's not real conflict. That's like, anyway, that's high school. And so those skills of navigating conflict, setting boundaries, and that word's gotten a bit bastardized, necessarily so. I always say pendulums don't go from being way over here and find perfect balance, right? They go way over here. We can't down with the patriarchy, right to equality. It goes all the way over here and comes back. And same thing with things like that. And so, healthy conflict, communication, boundaries, healing that inner child, whatever those wounds might be. And I don't know how you do that outside of therapy.
Well, I think that's part of how you learn it, and listen, I was raised in a family with I had an older sibling, my older sister, she's great. But our family was dysfunctional in its own ways and stuff. But when we fought, boy, howdy, and it could get loud, but we fought it out right now. Whereas my wife's family, they never fought, and Laura never heard her parents argue. And so the first time we had an argument, I expected to go like my parents' argument. Well, let's fight, let's go. It gets loud and we get it out. And Laura's like, oh my God, we're getting divorced. Like, and I'm like, no, what are you talking about? We're just fighting, whatever. And so it took us, gosh, man, 15, 20 years of marriage to level that out to where we fight in ways that are okay for each other. And that's okay. So boundaries, it gets bastardized, but that's like I tell folks, like, look, okay. So people are like, John, you curse like a sailor. No, I was a sailor. I'm a role model. Okay.
I can't say that though. Like, oh, Amy,
you curse like a sailor. I curse as a sailor. Okay, it's different. But I have a thing. So bad words don't hurt my feelings a bit. You cannot really offend me with language, but I don't allow language used at me.
I was just gonna say the at me difference. Yep.
Yeah, it's a big difference for me. So I don't care about anything. And I say this in my badge camps all the time. I go, look, there's a big difference between saying fucking drop it to somebody and saying drop it, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Because when you motherfuck someone, now I'm talking about you as a person, right? So I've told guys before, hey man, don't motherfuck me. Okay. That's all I'm saying. Like, you can, all the bad words in the world. Okay. You're upset. I get it. Let's talk about things. Don't motherfuck me. Well, I'll do whatever I want. Well, then our conversation's over. Have a nice day. And we're done here. So, those are the kind of boundaries that I think, sometimes you just got to enforce. You just got to go, well, I mean, if our boundaries don't overlap here and we don't have any place that we can connect, well, then we just don't. And I get that. I tell folks, I haven't talked to my father-in-law in, I don't know, 13, 14 years, because our boundaries just don't overlap in any capacity. And so, okay. And I had to get to the place where, it's funny because then of course my wife's like, what does that mean? And I was like, hey, what your relationship with your mom and dad is yours. And I'm not telling you what you have to do. I'm telling you my boundaries can't overlap. And then she decided, well, you know what, if you can't be in the presence of my husband, well, then guess what? He's my bestie and I'm going to side with him. So she doesn't talk to them hardly ever either. My kids, as they've gotten to be adults, we always said, listen, when they were kids, that's our job to protect them from unhealthy relationships. I said, but when you're an adult, you can decide how much relationship you want to have with him. I'd be cautious of a couple things, but you don't let my experience be yours. And I don't want to play that game. Yeah, interestingly, I don't think any of them have a strong relationship there. They've all kind of decided on their own that it's not so much healthy stuff here. But anyways, I think learning those things, I think you learn it in therapy for sure. I think you learn it again from good books. I always tell folks, all right, a lot of people are like, I can't afford therapy. I get it. I do. It's an expensive habit. It's an expensive thing. It's worth it. But if you can't, even with the telehealth stuff that we see so much now, man, sometimes just some good books can push you down the way. I found such great value in the last couple of years in a book called The Confidence Gap, which is basically a distilled version of acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. And ACT is a evidence-based treatment modality. When I started reading it, I went and talked to several of my therapist friends. Okay, time out. Talk to me about this. Is this quackery? Is this okay? No. It's a known modality. It's not the modality that I've chosen to pursue, whatever, but I know plenty of people have good success with it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. And so learning that and practicing that. Now, I really think that the value of the therapist is, okay, I can learn it from the book necessarily, right? And a good therapist should point you towards good books. But a good therapist is a coach. It's just a human interactions and an internal regulation coach. And my value as a firearms instructor, for instance, is you can learn most of what you do on YouTube these days with a handgun, but the coach is the one who stands there and says, so you're doing this thing. Is that working for you?
Yeah. Reflect back.
Yeah. I'm just reflecting back what I see you actually doing versus the model that you're trying to adopt. And is it working right? I'm doing the thing. You are doing that thing. Do you not? Oh, you don't see that you're doing that thing. Okay. So that's probably where our first challenge is. You're not perceiving that thing. Let's see if we can see that. Now, I do this all the time in gun school where I'll see people and they'll get in like a shooting stance and it looks all weird. And I go, okay, let me have the gun. I have the gun. Now you stand there like a normal human doing normal human things, like stand up, like straight. Good. You feel comfortable? Yeah. Now I'm going to put the gun back in your hand. Can you keep that feeling of being comfortable? I don't know. Now I got a gun in my hand. I got to do gun things. Okay, back up again, pull the gun back, stand up like a normal human doing normal human things. And now okay, good. So then when they start to feel that and I can help them and receive it. And the same thing with a therapist, right? Like, oh, okay, wait a minute. I'm so uncomfortable with this thing. Oh, okay. Now let's understand why, let's perceive what's going on with it. Let's represent it to ourselves. And what skills can we bring to bear here that we have that can help us to navigate this successfully? Man, it's super valuable to have a coach in that area.
Could not possibly agree more. I think one of the things I wish I had learned a lot easier on, or a lot earlier on, is the extent to which, how do I say this? Like, our beliefs aren't necessarily factual, and how everything is skewed by everyone's different lens. And so I wanted to live in a world of black and white and right and wrong.
Don't we all?
I really wanted to, John. I really, really wanted to. And I wish that I had recognized that much, much sooner. That
I think you want a great book on this, Amy?
Sure.
I shared it not too long ago. It's a great book by a guy named Jonathan Haidt called The Righteous Mind. HAIDT, The Righteous Mind. And he is like a social psychologist. And his entire life's work has been figuring out how people make moral decisions. And he's done that cross-culturally. And so I spent time in India figuring out how do the Indian people in India make moral decisions? How do people in urban environments, how do people in Africa make, and from all that developed a framework, a universal framework for how all people make moral decisions based on, he calls them taste buds, one of 6 moral foundations, and how those play out in people's lives. And he really interesting book on how we are intuitive, not logical, and we intuit first. And the negative version of that is we make emotional decisions, and then we justify those emotional decisions with logic. So and everybody goes, yeah, the other side, they're just emotional and I'm logical. And I go, you don't understand how you are, do you? So you're telling me that you don't understand your internal processes well, which is common. But that book opened my eyes so good on how he calls it the elephant and the rider. That a lot of, everybody's the rider and they feel like they're in charge of the elephant, which is great until you spend any time around a real elephant.
Yeah.
And they're going to do what they want to do, right? Like, but so anyhow, I think that book is a great book to understand how this different person, wait a minute, what moral foundation are they making this decision based on? And I'm making my decision based on these other, intuitive moral foundations. And I always tell the great example in the book that I love is in our world here. If somebody said, okay, so your dad has totally agreed to this, okay, and he feels great about it, would you go on TV? You're going to get paid $100,000 to slap your dad with a pie on TV. And dad's cool with it, and you're going to get paid $100,000. Would you do that?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I'm like, heck yeah, I'd do it for $50. What are you talking about? As long as dad's okay with it, like, sure, I would. If you go to India, the answer to that is absolutely not. Unequivocally no, and I don't care what it is, because of their understanding of sanctity, which is one of the moral foundations, and respect for parents. They couldn't, no matter what it is. Even if dad's okay with it, it would be too disrespectful to dad to do.
Wow.
And so you go, now, wait a minute, same moral foundations, and which one's right and which one's wrong? Well, there's not an answer to that.
Right.
And
we all justify and we all land where we land. And yeah, I think that was one of my biggest frustrations during the pandemic is like, why is anybody pretending they have any kind of accurate information right now that makes them right? It's like, if we could agree that we're all choosing to land somewhere based on our own fears and our own parameters, like what my home life is, what my work life is, my information is, my health is, and you're doing the same for your life. But it was the pretending there was one right way for the sake of humanity, or all of those different pieces. It's like, no, you've justified that. That's the story. Those are the labels you've put on your decisions and the stories you've created for your decisions. We all create our story of why we're doing what we're doing. And yeah, I wish I had learned a lot sooner that most of what we're doing is creating stories.
I agree 100%. I would say, thank God I got out of pastoring when I did, because as soon as the pandemic hits, every pastor in America is in a Kobayashi Maru. Like, you cannot win. If you decide you're going to not hold services versus hold services, you're going to alienate half the people. When you decide to have services, are you going to require masks? Or you're not going to require masks? You've lost half the people again. Every decision you make in every one of these is super polarizing, and you're wrong, and there ain't nothing you're going to do about it. And I'm like, thank God I quit before that I didn't have to endure that, because it would have driven me out for sure.
When I felt very grateful. I mean, I had to walk that tightrope.
Sure.
We opened July 31st.
Remember, you opened.
Yes, July 31st.
I was like, okay, we're kind of the height of the pandemic here, and this is going to be a crowd, and what are we going to do? And Laura and I were like, well, I mean, we don't have to go. Like, it's our choice if we want to go too. All right, cool. Do we want to wear masks or not wear masks? And you were super cool. You're like, hey, whatever you want to do, I'm cool with. Like, however that works, but we're going to open. And I was like, oh God, self-agency. And like, oh, wait a minute. Somebody just
tell me what to do. Grown up and think for myself.
Yeah. So we did. We came and we hung out and saw what was going on, and didn't die of the Rona. Amazing.
Yeah. Well, I always like to wrap up these with, you only get to pick one.
Ooh.
Your number one thing that you are most passionately committed to changing the conversation about.
Oof, I only get to pick one. I mean, I think that probably my biggest thing around that, it's a combination issue, is that the right to self-defense is a civil right. The right to self-protection. You have the right to life. You have the right to liberty. You have the right to the pursuit of the highest ideals. And that has become a political football, and, around gun control. And I think that's wrong. I think we need to rephrase that. We need to reformat it to recognizing that we're all after the same goal. Okay. My friends on the right, they look at their gun control advocate friends and they say, oh, you're trying to enslave me. That's not true. My friends on the left, they look at the folks who are for gun rights and they say, you love guns more than children. That's also a straw man. I've heard both of those, with regularity. The reality is we all want to live in a place of freedom and safety. We all want to live in a place of freedom and safety. 100%, we're seeking the same goal. We have different ideas of how to get there. And so reframing the idea, and I always say to have a meaningful clash, you have to start with areas of agreement. You have to get down to bedrocks to say our goals are the same. Now we're on the same side of the table. We're not bickering at each other across the table. We are instead on the same side of the table, looking at the problem together. And we can disagree.
How do we get there? Yeah.
Yeah. And we can disagree about the best way to get there. Right. Like, it's like I joke all the time. Like, so every time I hear the call, we have to outlaw the AR-15. Good luck. It's the most commonly owned firearm in America. It's also a vanishingly insignificant part of the problem, like vanishingly small. And so it wouldn't even do anything. Well, we got to do something. Do we? Sometimes we don't. Sometimes you just go, no, you don't have to do something here. Sometimes we have to just sit and endure. And sometimes you go, well, we can make a positive difference here. And we can encourage some positive, healthy changes. And maybe we don't have to do that legally. Maybe we do that culturally. But I think if you start with the singular idea that we're all after the same goal, then I'm talking to a fellow human being trying to get to the same place. And whether or not I believe in we should outlaw guns in entirety, it's not going to happen. Or we should have fully automatic firearms delivered by Amazon Prime drones, in 4 hours. Well, whichever one of those you want to go to, having those conversations and reframing that in the sense of this is a civil right. This isn't me against you. This is us together. I think is an important part of the next 50 years of America.
100%. All right. Well, you're an amazing storyteller. So I think we should wrap up with you sharing one of your most hilarious video reviews, however you want to think of one.
Oh boy.
Something with a happy ending, because my love for Homer.
It's got to have a happy ending, right?
Nobody dies. Something hilarious.
Well, I mean, so the problem with self-defense is it's always life and death, right? It's people pointing guns at each other and criminals deciding that they are going to do that. I will say some of our favorite ones that get a lot of views are what we call potlucks. And sometimes you heard the potluck, right? So, you show up at church. I was a pastor of a Baptist church for 10.5 years. Right. And, Baptists say, I love you via the casserole.
Right.
And we call a potluck in the self-defense space when everybody shows up to give somebody a beating who desperately needs it. And okay. At potluck, everyone brings a dish, right? So in the defensive world, guess what? Everybody shows up and offers what they have available to them. So we've seen that several times where dude shows up to, take advantage of somebody, to steal from them, whatever. Somebody steps up, and then the next thing you know, the whole crowd comes out the woodwork and the beating commences. And sometimes we call those educational beatdowns too. I do believe that every man in America at some time in his life needs to have his ass kicked, because that teaches him where his boundaries are. Like, so I've had it happen to me. You lip off to the wrong person and he beats your ass. And then you get up and you go, hey, watch your mouth, kid. And you go, I'm watching it bleed right now. Yes, sir. I'll watch my mouth. That's a healthy thing in someone's world. So, we did have one. I think that one was out of Karachi, Pakistan. And the Pakistani people have a strong sense of justice and a very weak police force. And so the community polices themselves. And dude shows up, grabs a hold of a woman's purse, and like they wear that with their sarongs, right? Pakistan, a largely Muslim place, and with their hijab. So, but he couldn't get it off her. So then he starts kind of dragging her around, trying to get it off her. Well, then a couple of the bystanders show up, and as soon as they start grabbing a hold of him, he lets go and starts running off. Well, they didn't let him. And then it is funny that after a couple dudes start holding him down, well, then obviously the screaming and the hooting and hollering starts bringing other people. Well, what's happening? Oh, this guy's trying to steal her purse. oh, really? Well, you shouldn't do that around here. And then dude number 3 shows up and kicks that guy in the ribs. And then dude number 4, next thing you know, like there's grandma shows up with a, like a bucket or something and is whacking him over the head with a bucket, and after a while, I'm like, okay. After a while, you got to stop eventually, right? Like you can't kill this guy. Although maybe you want to. So we see those pretty regular. And those are some of the fun ones in self-defense where
everybody
justice
stands up for each other.
Yeah, where people stand up, where good people are like, nah, ain't happening, fool. We did have one which was really funny. Two armed robbers show up in a store, start robbing the joint. Well, there's a security guard who's off duty. He comes into the store to just buy it, something, sees these guys doing their thing, draws his gun and puts a bullet in one of them, non-fatally, and the guy falls down, and the dude, the other guy, drops his gun and starts screaming and going, oh my God, stop. Or, the gun's not real. And the security guy reaches over and shows him, and he goes, oh yeah, fucker, mine is. and the guy's like, I know, stop shooting me, please, God, oh my God. And he held those guys there until such time as the cops showed up, arrested him, took him to jail. Well, took the one guy to the hospital and then to jail. But one of the funniest things I've ever heard somebody say is like, stop, they're not real. And he's like, yeah, fucker, mine is.
Yeah.
Which
shouldn't play with grown-up toys. Well, and that's what I told the kids. Like, all the teenagers are playing that game, running around with the water guns. Oh, I forgot the name of the game. And like, if you wear pool floaties, you're not shootable.
Oh, we used to play a similar game called Assassin.
Yes, it's Assassin. It's Assassin. And I just told the kids, I was like, listen, you make sure that it is white, blue, red, green, pink. I was like, do not ever have a black water gun. It's like, first of all, I'll take it from you. Second of all, those consequences are not funny. And you could get in real trouble.
We used to play with Nerf dart guns,
Yeah. Same thing though. I'm like, make it white and blue and orange and neon something. Like, make sure it does not in any way resemble like the airsoft guns. Those look very similar, especially to an untrained eye.
Yeah, for sure.
Box, like,
don't play around with that stuff.
Yeah,
it's a great way to get shot.
Yeah,
especially you live in Arizona. People carry guns here. Yeah, and it's not about, well, wait a minute, it's just an airsoft gun. Well, would a reasonable person say that it is? And would a reasonable person believe that it is? Or would they think that it's real? And you see a bunch of teenage kids playing Assassin.
I was just going to say, a bunch of teenagers people aren't going to necessarily assume they're up to no good. They're not going to necessarily assume that they're just playing a game. They assume that they're stealing, vandalizing.
Yep.
Depends on the people group, but yeah.
And of course, when you play stupid games, you will often win stupid prizes. And it takes in some cases, a surprising little amount of fucking around to find out.
Yeah. Increasingly little amount.
Yeah. So we used to do that. The rules were not during, you couldn't get touched when you were in sports. So if you were in a sports practice or anything like that, you were untouchable. While you were in class, you were untouchable. So no shenanigans in class.
The schools have banned it on campus altogether.
Oh, come on, bunch of damn killjoy jerks.
I know. Yeah. So they were saying not at work, not at school, and not after 10 p.m. was my other rule.
It's a good rule.
Not a lot real good happens after dark. What?
Should be in the house after 10 p.m., especially on weeknights anyways.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah. It scared me one time. There were cars like slowly circling our neighborhood, and I saw some people running through yards, and I didn't know what they were doing. It turns out they were playing the flashlight version of Assassin.
Okay.
But for a hot minute, I was about to call the police.
Right.
It looked like they're casing they're like driving really slow and circling back, and then you see people darting through yards. That looks shady as hell.
Good way to get a gun pointed at you.
Yeah, shady. Anyway, I am so grateful for your time. We have covered quite the range of topics today. Appreciate your insights, man. Always, like I said, your wisdom sticks with me. I know you've got a very busy next 4 weeks coming up, but maybe we can get together for dinner with our spouses again.
I eat dinner every day. I love it. Let's do it.
We all need to eat, right?
Right.
Well, I'll get with Laura on that. But thank you so much for being here, John. I do appreciate the many ways in which you do contribute to changing the conversation in a very positive way. I'll let you get to your shower, and thanks for being here.
All right. We'll talk soon.